In today's episode, we're mounting the race seat. Yeah, 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 yeah. This is not the seat that we're going to be using during the race, but it is the one I'm going to use for mock-up purposes. Now, a teammate of mine managed to get a brilliant deal on 2 seats. The other one, unfortunately, is in quite poor condition, but it did come with a set of runners, so we are going to have to transfer them over to this one. Now, I checked in our rulebook and with our governing body tech people, and it turns out we don't actually need an FIA-approved seat, so this one would comply. Unfortunately, one of my teammates don't fit it, so we are going to have to source another one, but for the meantime, this will do for mock-up purposes. Right, first job is to fit these runners onto the bottom of the seat. This hole isn't quite lining up, but it's right at the end, so I'm going to have to ever so slightly oval this hole out so I can get the bolt in. Right, next job is to make something that bolts into the car that then this bolts onto. The front mount for the seat rail is comprised of a 5mm thick strip of steel that would bolt into the existing seat mounting points. Using existing seat mounting points is a good idea, as these are typically reinforced parts of the car that will take the necessary forces applied to them. Next job is to bend this out to match the angle of the mount in the rover. I've already gone and measured the car, and it's 120 degrees. So I'm going to use the angle finder and adjustable spanner to get that in the correct position. Right, after taking some very careful measurements of the original driver's seat and doing some maths, I think I figured out where the centre line of the bucket seat needs to be in relation to this bar. Now, the reason this was so complicated is that the mounts on the standard rover seat aren't actually symmetrical, whereas the bucket seat, they are. So I need to figure out where the centre line is between these two bolt holes, and then the centre line of the seat is actually going to be offset from that.
After some very careful marking out, I refitted the seat runners to the seat, offered up the mounting bar and got it clamped in place ready to be tack welded.
It's like the hottest day in the year and I'm having to wear overalls because of welding. Now, if this was a MIG, I probably wouldn't do it, but you get pretty bad sunburn, well, of any type of welder. Because of the length of time, yeah, I'm not taking my chances. I'm going to do this as fast as I can because I want to get out of these.
With the front mounting bar clamped in place and the end of the runner trimmed, I tack welded everything in place. I tack welded it using the TIG rather than the MIG, as TIG welding tends to produce less splatter and therefore reduce the chance of me setting fire to the seat.
Right, well, I'm going to let this cool down. I'm going to take these off so I can cool down, and then we can fit this to the car. Right. Seat bolted in on its front mount. I've chucked a couple of bits of scrap wood underneath the back to try and get the angle right. Now, if I'm honest, I'm probably too far away, and ideally I'd want to be angled just fractionally back to get my arms right. Although I do have to bear in mind that this has got to work for 5 people. So I'm going to adjust the wooden blocks underneath the back to try and get the angle a bit better, and then start coming up with a game plan of how I'm going to attach the rear of these rails to the car.
My plan was to make a bar that bolted into the inner rear seat mount and the lower outer seat belt mounting holes. As before, both of these mounting points are existing reinforced parts of the car, so they are ideal places to mount a seat to. With a cardboard template made for the outer mounting plate, I trace round it onto some 6mm steel. Is 6mm thick a bit overkill? Yeah, probably, but it was a small offcut I had, and when it comes to making seat mounts, I'd rather go a bit overboard with them. Just a quick note here, seatbelt mounting bolts very often have imperial threads, even in cars that typically use metric fasteners. So if you're going to mount a seat like this, make sure you don't throw the bolts out when you strip the car down. With one side mount done and the rear bar clamped back in place, I broke out the cardboard again and designed the other side. Unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced the footage of me making the other side mount. However, with it made and all the parts prepped for welding, I got everything back into the car and realigned.
Right, with that lot all held in, then now we can tack weld it in place.
With the rear mounts all tack welded together, I then tacked the right hand runner to the rear bar, but purposely didn't tack the left hand one.
Right, with the mounts all tack welded, I've just got this runner to do. However, I'm not going to do that until I've actually got the seat bolted back on. And the reason for that is I need to make sure I get this and this parallel. If I don't, then obviously the seat's not going to slide back and forth. So yet again, this is going to come out. You know you've been a mechanical engineer too long when you know exactly what Allen key to get for exactly what bolt, just by looking at it.
The seat mount back out of the car, I then needed to fit it to the seat to ensure that the seat runners were parallel before tack welding the left hand rail to the rear mount. With everything clamped or tack welded together, I got the seat back into the car so I could weld the final joint on the runner. Previously, when tack welding things next to the seat, I used my TIG welder to reduce the chance of splatter and setting the seat on fire. My TIG is unfortunately a tad bulky and not as easy to move around as my MIG, so I decided this time to chance it and use the MIG instead. To reduce the chance of setting the seat on fire, I used a piece of scrap steel as a kind of sort of makeshift shield.
After tack welding the seat in the other night, I obviously sat in it and tried it out. And if I'm going to be honest, very quickly I realised that this isn't right. Left to right is fine. I'm in line with the steering wheel and in the pedals. It's not like driving a classic Mini where everything is offset to the left and where you sit. Front to back is not a problem either. It's on adjustable rails. That's kind of the point of them, and that gets me back and forth. The issue I've got though is with the angle of the seat. I personally want to be leaned back a little bit. Now, that isn't just personal preference. I have actually checked the driver's seat in my Civic, which is effectively the same car, compared to this. And this is basically way too upright. It needs to go back by my estimation of about 12 degrees. So I'm going to cut my tack welds out and retry this again. This is why you tack weld stuff, kids. Well, this is a hell of a lot better. The angle's a lot better. I to be honest, very comfortably dropped into that. I'm not trying to shuffle around too much and get position comfortable. A bit awkward because it's sliding back and forth, so I took springs out the sliding mechanism. But yeah, now I can look at actually attaching the proper mounts onto this. So what I'm going to do is grind the welds out on the front bar and then re-weld it back in the correct position. Been a few months since we last worked on the seat on this car. In the meantime, other things have been happening. Another one of our teammates, who's yet to be on camera, basically found this one, which in his words, fits his fat ass. So let's take out the mock-up seat and then see what we need to adjust on the mounting mechanism to get this one to go in. I'm really hoping nothing.
I've lost count how many times I had to take the seat in and out of the car, but yet again it had to be removed.
I've measured the new seat that's going in the car and compared it to this one, and interestingly enough, despite the other one being a bigger seat, these runners are actually too far apart at the minute for it. Now, that's not the end of the world. I never fully welded them because I kind of expected something like this to happen, and also due to the design of my seat mount, it should be fairly easy to cut them out and slide the seat runners. By sliding them in, we should be able to get rid of the little spacer pieces that I had to create to get this one in, and it will basically mean I'm not going to have the clearance issues with accessing this bolt. So let's get this mechanism unbolted from the seat, cut my tack welds, and then we can start looking at lining up the new seat onto these mounts.
The spacers I mentioned were made to give access to the mounting bolts. I did film the creation of these, but as they've become redundant, I've decided not to bother showing you them. Don't worry, you really didn't miss much. Also, the eagle-eyed amongst you might notice what looks like a release mechanism. Again, because of the change of seat, this version of the release mechanism became redundant, so my final solution is coming up later in the episode. No, I didn't just drop that on a dog in case you were wondering. The front and rear mount bars cleaned up, I refitted them to the car, ready to put the seat on its runners back on and line everything up. It was at this point that I discovered that while the mounting points on the new seat were closer together side to side, front to back they were further apart, and so the runners were too short. To solve the issue of the seat runners being too short, some extension brackets had to be made. With the extension brackets made, I got them and the seat runners bolted back onto the seat ready so that they could be tack welded onto the mount. You may have noticed I ventured into my kitchen because at the time it was incredibly cold and wet outside. Yeah, it helps if you bolt the brackets on the right way around. Once again, it was important to get the seat runners parallel before marking the next holes to drill. To save me from having to get nuts into some very awkward places, these holes were tapped out to M8. This is one of the reasons why I use 6mm plates for these brackets. With the brackets made, it was then just a case of getting everything bolted back onto the seat and aligned before I could put the seat back onto the front and rear mounts and then tack weld everything together again.
Can go back in the car and be tack welded in, but it's dark and raining, so it's going to have to wait for another day.
Now since I built these seat mounts, I have invested in a welding blanket. If I'm honest, I don't know why I didn't invest in one sooner. Fortunately though, I didn't set the seat on fire. With the seat mount tacked together, and yes I did tack the rear mounts, it's just unfortunately my memory card filled up and so I missed it on camera, the seat had to come back out again, hopefully for the last time. For the seat back out of the car, I removed the mounts from it and then fully welded it all together. With the mounting frame made up, the last thing to fabricate was the release mechanism. While I had tried to make one before due to changing the seat, I had to change the design a bit. Simply because of the material I had to hand, I had to make the levers of the release mechanism in two halves and weld them together. This part I'm making will hold the tube that runs across the front of the seat that you pull up to release the mechanism.
Right, well, through the magic of editing, I've made the other parts, so I need to tack weld these together and then get the base frame off the seat, so I can attach these to it and get everything to line up. So this is going to involve some intimate time with a TIG welder, I feel.
After welding the two halves of the other release lever together and a little fettling off camera, I tack welded the tube and one of the release levers together. With the release mechanism all tack welded together, and yes, I did check that it worked, it was then just a case of fully welding it.
Well, that's the release mechanism handle all done. It's not the prettiest, but it works. I'm going to let this cool down because it is actually still quite warm. And once it's cooled down, I'm going to then fit it to the seat, and then we get this with the seat back in the car.
Well, I'm going to end the episode here with me refitting the seat, hopefully for the last time. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please hit that like button and share. If you want to stay up to date with the build, then please hit that subscribe button and remember to hit the notification bell. And finally, if you want to see more episodes in this build series, then click the link that should be on screen now. Once again, thanks for watching.